Theodore Roosevelt was born on October 27, 1858, to a rich family. His early education was from private tutors. He suffered from asthma and poor eyesight and built himself up physically through sport and exercise. Roosevelt attended Harvard University and graduated in 1880. His young wife, Alice, tragically died young. Roosevelt died on January 6, 1919.
20th century president. He was very engaged in both domestic and foreign policy, and he set the political agenda for the whole country. His political program, the Square Deal, aimed to distinguish good corporations that provided useful products and services at fair prices from evil corporations that existed just to make money. That is hilarious. A corporation that doesn't exist just to make money. That's fantastic, Teddy. Everybody knows that corporations are just inherently greedy people, but they are people. Roosevelt felt it was the federal government's responsibility to regulate the economy directly and to break up power of wealthy corporations, and to use the Sherman Act to prosecute bad trusts, such as the Northern Securities Company, which was a holding company created by J.P. Morgan that directed 3 major railroads and monopolized transport. And that did not make J.P. Morgan a happy bunny. Thank you for that, Stan. That's wonderful. Shockingly, the legislative and executive branches managed to work together, and Congress passed some actual legislation, including the Hepburn Act of 1906, which gave the Interstate Commerce Commission the power to regulate railroad rates and examine their company books. And Roosevelt was also a conservationist. He wanted to preserve the environment from economic exploitation, probably so that there would be plenty of animals for him to hunt with his big stick while he walked softly. Having appointed noted progressive Gifford Pinchot head of the Forest Service, millions of acres were set aside for new, highly managed national parks, reflecting the progressive idea that experts could manage the world. But then in 1908, Teddy Roosevelt decided to go elephant hunting instead of running for re-election, and he picked William Howard Taft to be his successor.
Roosevelt rose to presidency during growing public concern over the growing economic and political power of businesses. He believed large companies had potential in the future of the economy, but they sometimes abused their power. During Roosevelt's first few months of presidency, J.P. Morgan of Northern Pacific, James J. Hill of the Great Northern, and Edward H. Harriman of Union Pacific fought for control of railroads in the Northwest. Finally, they agreed to join as the Northern Securities Company. President of the Northern Securities revived the Sherman Antitrust Act to protect the public from monopolies. He thought the new trust violated the act, but he wanted to show that the government and Roosevelt had power to enforce it. The case of the Northern Securities proved to the president that he had the ability to and would use the law to dissolve trusts and monopolies.
Teddy Roosevelt was America's first progressive president. Between 1901 and 1909, Roosevelt used his position to break up many trusts. These were huge combinations of companies that used their economic power to take advantage of their competitors and workers. Roosevelt's Square Deal was designed to give all Americans, from farmers to businessmen, an equal chance to succeed. Roosevelt created the Pure Food and Drug Act to protect consumers, and he established the National Park System to conserve the environment.
In 1881, a 23-year-old Theodore Roosevelt was elected to the New York State Legislature. There, he served 3 one-year terms and supported the progressive reform wing of the Republican Party. In 1886, he had an unsuccessful run for the New York City mayor. In 1889, Roosevelt returned to public office after President Benjamin Harrison appointed him to Civil Service Commission. In 1895, he became the president of the Police Commission of New York City and worked hard to revise the civil service examinations while searching out fraud. The reforms introduced opposition from both Democrats and Republicans in the city government. In 1897, William McKinley appointed Roosevelt to Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Roosevelt used his post to help ready the Navy for a war with Spain, and he wanted to end the Spanish rule of Cuba. In 1898, in the Spanish-American War, he joined the 1st Regiments of the U.S. Cavalry Volunteers as a colonel. He was then elected the governor of New York in November.